Today we've got questions on Catholicism in New England, the Japanese Civil War, and why did political machines like Tammany Hall fade away? Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with a demure Charles Coulombe.
Demure?
Demure.
Really? Demure?
Demure.
I can't, I can't do it. I'm sorry. I can't. You know who was very demure?
Who?
Diane.
From where, Jack and Diane?
Oh, oddly enough.
Is she demure, though?
Well, yeah, she's growing up in the heartland.
Does that make one self-demure?
Not necessarily. Not when you're hanging out with a guy like Jack, I guess. But she's more demure than Brenda. I mean, you couldn't describe Brenda as demure.
I don't think so. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't...
Who would you rather your daughter hang out with? Jack and Diane or Brenda and Eddie?
This is just, you're trying to break my brain right now.
What are you talking about? It's an honest question of a potential father.
Okay, so death is not an option?
No, death is not an option, and your kid has only two sets of people she can hang out with. The group that hang out with Brenda and Eddie at the malt shop, or the group that hang out with Jack and Diane at the Piggly Wiggly.
I'd say Jack and Diane because they're small town.
I see.
I was born in a small town.
Oh, we're now with a lot of opioids. Some of them small towns, you understand why they have the opioids. But no, that I don't know that Brenda and Eddie and Jack and Diane were all that different from each other, really.
Correct.
I mean, Brenda and Eddie were the popular studies of the King and the Queen of the Prom. You know, they got married in the summer of '75.
Yes.
But somehow we knew that Jack and Diane, that
marriage would happen in the end of July. Oh wait, no. Okay, I'm mixing it up.
No, we knew that Brenda and Eddie would always survive.
Right, there we go.
There we were waving goodbye. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which we didn't do with Jack and Diane. I don't know. Did we even go to the wedding?
I don't think so.
Is it mentioned in the song?
Because Jack's going to grow up and be a football star.
I see.
So it's just kind of there.
So they're young still.
Yeah. Because Brenda and Eddie, that's scenes from an Italian restaurant. So it's like looking back, like, oh, what happened to Brenda and Eddie?
Not a pretty sight, actually. Whereas Jack and Diane still have their whole future ahead of them.
Yeah.
If that's what you can call it.
Yeah.
All right.
So there's hope there.
Sure. You bet. Absolutely. Just like with the election. Anyway, moving on. Nothing to see here, folks. Move along. Move along now. There's nothing to see here. Now, you see, that is the most comforting thing I know about in this election year.
What?
The idea of Chief Clancy's Billy Club coming down on somebody. That's kind of a comfort.
Let's talk the election. Since you just brought it up, you kind of dropped the bombshell on me a little bit in terms of your opinion. Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah, you did,
I
actually.
did not.
Yeah, you did.
Did not.
You okay, well, I'm just going to talk for you then. This guy says Kamala Harris will be the next president of the United States.
That I did say.
And I asked you, what happened? Like, what happened for you to get there?
Well, what happened for you to get there was President Trump declaring that women were going to love his administration and it was going to be great for reproductive rights. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, well, he has to say that to get elected. Yeah, that's why he had to say it in 2016.
I don't think he did say that.
No, he didn't say it in 2016.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah.
It really, what I find, in a certain sense, worse than whatever may really happen, and I'm not looking forward to it, frankly, is the way people are investing themselves personally in it. in pro or anti-Trump. Kamala, okay, I can't stand the woman. Fine, I think she's a moron. Trump, I don't like him either, to be honest. And now the whole, adopting the reproductive rights jargon, okay, fine. What about vegetable rights? Salad is murder.
No, that's not true. Kill all the vegetables.
Kill all the vegetables. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize he meant that kind. They didn't just come when they came for the carrots. I did nothing because I wasn't a carrot. When they came for the potatoes, I did nothing because I wasn't a potato. When they came for the celery, I did nothing because I wasn't a celery stalk. When they came for the garlic, I did nothing because I wasn't a garlic clove. And then when they came for the human vegetables, there was no one to speak for me. Is that basically where we are now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hi, Grok. Hey, can you dig it?
Yeah.
That's a phrase we need to revive.
What is that? Shaft? What is that from?
Well, it's used in Shaft, but it was big in a lot of black music and so on in the 70s. Soul Train, Hurry Down to the Stone Soul Picnic. Can you dig it?
Yeah.
Shaft's big score, and that's blaxploitation, baby. Blackula, Scream, Blackula, Scream, Blackenstein, Coffee, Get Christy Love, Switchblade Sisters, a real classic of the genre. What?
Switchblade. Tell us about that one.
The Switchblade Sisters. Well, Switchblade Sisters is a heartwarming tale of. Why are you looking at me?
I don't let me interrupt. Go on. It's a heartwarming tale. Go on.
A heartwarming tale of two young ladies in the hood who were forced to get tough to survive.
Oh, okay.
And they find themselves.
They find themselves. Okay, I thought there was going to be more. They find themselves surrounded by, or they find themselves.
Well, I mean, by murdering bad people.
Okay.
Get Christy Love. Cotton Comes to Harlem, and its irreplaceable sequel, Come Back Charleston Blue.
You know a lot of these.
I saw them all at the dear old World Theater, 25 cents a pop for 3 movies. And let me tell you, Hollywood Boulevard. We saw only the best, and it wasn't just blaxploitation. They had, The Corpse Grinders, The Undertaker and His Pals, The Sins of Ruth. It was a #1 top-notch film. I mean, they were ahead of their time. They would show movies nobody else would show.
Why would they do that?
Why? Well, because they were cheap.
Oh, okay. So it's like the movie creators asked for less or something like that? Like, how does that work? Like, why not just show popular movies?
Well, because those cost more to show.
Okay.
What do you think?
Okay.
Plus, they could pretend they were an art house when really they were just a grindhouse. They didn't show porn, but we had special theaters for that. But they showed these really.
I mean, I guess how come we don't have that? I mean, do we have that now? And I'm just missing it.
No, we have straight-to-video wonders.
Straight-to-video wonders. Okay, that's actually true.
Yeah, we don't. Okay. We don't. That's why the World Theater is no longer the World Theater. But it was great. I mean, as my brother used to say, 25 cents for the films and worth every penny. You really got what you paid for at the World.
Wow.
And popcorn.
For free?
No, you had to pay for the popcorn. It's expensive too. But they didn't notice the brown paper bags.
I don't even want to know. So
liquid refreshment.
Oh, okay. What, people come in with brown paper bags? We're
Yeah.
just bringing alcohol? Okay.
Oh, you presume it's
Oh,
alcohol.
I presume it's alcohol.
What if it
Okay.
was root beer? You don't know. Did you check the bags? Nobody else did.
Well, last time you've been in a theater?
It's a long time. Now I see most of my first runs on the plane.
Yeah, but I'm wondering what was the last movie that coaxed you into the movie theater, you know?
You know, it was probably The Untouchables yeah, I think it was The Untouchables. No, sorry, not The Untouchables, Public Enemy. And that was it's in new hands now, but it was the Monrovia movie theater.
Johnny Depp movie?
I'm sorry?
The Johnny Depp movie, Public Enemy? Like, the Dillinger movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And before that, I saw Julie and Julia.
Oh, right. Okay.
Actually, I saw quite a few.
Those were a long time ago. That was actually, it's funny. It's kind of old age is happening to me where I think something wasn't so long ago, but then it ends up being like a movie like 2012, and it's like, oh, that's 12 years ago.
Yeah.
I thought it was a few years ago. That sucks.
I know. Believe me, I know. And it's going to get more so. I mean, I'm meeting tonight with some friends.
Yeah.
You know the last time we were all together?
No.
My 50th birthday. Almost 14 years ago.
So 2010.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that time has gone by so quickly.
Wow. Gosh.
Well, you see this though very often with groups of friends. They go through their middle age barely seeing one another, and then when they realize, especially as they're losing members to, wherever it is people go, they begin to meet more frequently. Like, give you an example, my dad's bomb crew during the war, they scattered, but when my dad turned, I think 60, they started having annual reunions, and they hadn't seen each other since the war.
Yeah.
But and none of them had died.
Yeah.
That was the funny thing. But they said, maybe we better get together while we're all still around.
Yeah.
And then they just kept, meeting every year. And then I think 3 or 4 years into it, they started dying. And the first one, I forget his name, but it began with A. The second, the next year was B. And then my dad, he went to the reunion, I guess, 2 weeks before his death, and said, well, I'm C. Maybe my number's next. And it was. So, but you find that because I think what happens is you realize all those years you're so busy putting a life together, and you don't really think about the guys.
Yeah.
But then you find yourself on the other side of 50, the other side of 60. And you think, I don't have that much time, neither do they. And it was a great time in our lives, certainly better than anything we're dealing with now. So why don't we start getting together more often? And I've seen that time after time in all sorts of ways. I mean, school classes, obviously. But you'll find often that when people were happy just to see each other every 10 years, right? Then all of a sudden they start having annual reunions. Well, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
So, anyways, it's something for you to look forward to.
Well, yeah, I saw a chart. There was a public chart where it graphs the time people spend with various different people by age, like the time you spend with coworkers, and then it's really high in your 20s, your 30s, and then it starts to taper off. And it's actually a really sad chart because everything tapers off other than your spouse.
Yeah.
And that gets even higher, but it's a really lonely looking graph.
Well, it is a lonely looking graph. And one thing, of course, is that in a culture like ours, most people's lives really are centered around work.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, and not just men, although men in particular, but not just men, after they retire, they really have to struggle find a role for themselves. Now, the good news for members of the community, anyway, is that very often retirees will channel that energy into various volunteer things.
Right.
And so, who is it who keeps the Farquhar Mansion going?
Yeah, we have that up in Sierra Madre, and the mountains there's actually trail builders.
Yeah.
I just discovered that actually yesterday. They're all volunteers. I thought it was the state, but it's not the state at all. It's volunteers.
It's volunteers. And you'll find a lot of things like that in a lot of places. The maintainers of really neat stuff are volunteers because, what else are they going to do with their time? And if you're reasonably healthy, and if you don't have a driving interest that would keep you at home, like your stamp collection or whatever, then it makes perfect sense. But you do have to redefine your role in life. And so, and I say thank God for the retirees doing things like this. It's Pasadena Heritage. I've done volunteer docenting for them on a couple of occasions. And of course, the vast majority of my brothers in the craft and sisters were retirees, and they get a pleasant weekend out. They meet a lot of interesting people because, someone who wants to go on the historic home tour in Pasadena, they're generally fairly interesting people,
Yeah.
So anyway, there we go. And we're almost at the end of the summer, late summer. This is, I guess, the last week of August we've got staring us in the face.
Correct. Next week. Well, I guess is it Monday, the September 1st? I want to say for Labor Day. I think so.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's going to be Labor Day weekend.
So that's next week, which means that you've got one more week, ladies and gentlemen, to wear your seersucker, your white linens, you ladies with your big hats, your parasols, the Panama hats, the boaters, and then summer comes to an end. Labor Day comes, and now, of course, in California, none of those rules apply because September is often the hottest month. So we'll still get to burn. But the good news is that if you can get up the energy to crawl into your supermarket or your Rite Aid or CVS, you'll get to see the stuff for Halloween.
Oh, that's right.
In a week, you think of cooler weather, the October country. Ooh. Isn't that neat?
What are you going to be for Halloween this year?
Probably the dictator of North Korea.
You're always the dictator of North Korea.
It's an easy costume. No, I may do something different this year. I don't know. It'll depend. I will be spending Halloween in Trumau this year. I didn't think I was, but I will be.
Okay.
So I'm glad of that because I'll carve the jack-o'-lantern for the kids again. Tell them the Halloween story. You know the Halloween story.
Do I? What Halloween story?
Well, it was last Halloween. I had carved the thing, and carved the pumpkin, right?
Right.
And so the kids began to say, the little ones began to say, Uncle Charles, we never see you without a tie on. I said, oh, I can never take my tie off. And they asked, well, why not? I told them, well, 20 years ago, I had just carved the pumpkin for my nephews and nieces. They were gathered around me, as you are now. And the younger ones started going, come on, Uncle Charles, take your tie off, take your tie off. I said, oh, kids, you don't want me to do that. I don't think that's a smart idea. And they said, oh, come on, you can do it, Uncle Charles. No, I don't think that's wise. I really don't. But they kept on. They wouldn't stop. So finally I said, you know what? Okay, kids, fine. I pulled off my tie. And, of course, my head went bouncing across the floor. So the kids start screaming and crying and shrieking and making a racket. And my brother Andre comes in. He looks at this. He grabs my head and he says, I told you never do this in front of the children. I don't know how many times. And he puts it back on my neck, reties the tie. I have warned you, never do this in this house again, or you're not welcome here. You understand me? And he stormed out.
Wow.
So that's why I don't do it.
Okay, it makes sense. You want to keep your head on straight.
Yeah, well, you got to keep a good head on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Or
So
if not a good head, at least the one you got. You don't seem impressed by that.
I wish I could be easily impressed. It would be a fun life.
Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? But you know what? I don't know. What would be scarier for you? Halloween in Salem or Halloween in Sleepy Hollow?
Well, I remember your description. I think last year we were talking about this, and you were saying Halloween in Salem is like Easter in the Holy Land.
It really is. It really is. It's true. It is true.
So I don't want to do that.
Okay.
I don't want to do.
So you don't want to participate in other people's fades.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Sleepy Hollow is just fine.
All right, fine. You know what's going on in Little Tokyo right now?
No.
No, not Little Tokyo. Sorry, Chinatown.
Yeah.
For the first time ever, Chinatown is observing the Hungry Ghosts Festival.
Oh, interesting. So what's that?
Well, according to Buddhist and Taoist mythology, this is the time of year when they call them hells open, and all those spirits who have no relations to look after them and venerate them spiritually come out basically to wreak havoc unless they're placated. And so food is left out for them, performances are put on for them, and the front rows are left empty for the ghosts to sit in and enjoy. And there are special services in their temples and so on. Buddhist and Taoist both. And that's the Hungry Ghost Festival.
What does that date back to?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
I wasn't there then.
So they believe in ghosts. That's interesting.
Yeah. The belief in ghosts is a universal one amongst mankind.
But the belief
different
in
explanations and different.
Yeah.
I mean, they have different views of where they come from and why they come, but the general idea is very much the same.
Some sort of purgation?
In a sense, and of course, if they, vaguely, but yes.
Okay. Some transition.
Yeah, but purgation is, in a sense, a part of it too.
Okay.
So get ready, ladies and gentlemen, and whatever you do, if you're in a very heavily Chinese neighborhood, this coming weekend, well, it'll be over by the time you see this, don't eat the food left out for the ghosts, or bad things will happen to you.
They waste food on ghosts? Don't they know ghosts don't eat food? This is ridiculous. I've never heard something so illogical. They leave food out for ghosts.
This man is culturally insensitive.
That doesn't even make sense. I mean, this isn't Slimer from Ghostbusters. Well, actually, maybe they do go that way.
I'd be careful about you. This is the very festival, and you're talking smack.
You know what I'm talking about with Slimer?
Yeah, I
ate
do.
A lot.
I do, but see, you're talking smack about the Hungry Ghosts on their festival. You know when the Autumn Moon Festival comes around, why don't you make fun of the moon and see if you don't get showered in moon drops?
Look, all I'm saying is logistically, I feel like Chinatown's a hop, skip, and a jump from Skid Row. So, like, how does that work? Like, are they really gonna?
What part of culturally insensitive do you not get?
I'm bringing up something a very practical consideration here, that you have homeless next to these people that are leaving out all this food for ghosts.
Well, that might reduce the homeless situation in itself. You never know.
Okay.
That's a terrible thing. Are you not going to go down to Fifth Street Fun Festival?
I don't think so, Charles.
So Skid Row is a place you don't go to?
No, I do not.
I remember when I was there with the late lamented Brother Leonard Murray one time, driving down Fifth Street, in fact, and we crossed Wall Street in L.A., which, believe me, ladies and gentlemen, is nothing like the one in New York. and we saw this guy pushing this market basket filled with trash. And brother says, you know who that is? You know who that is, don't you? I said, no, who? He says, the Wizard of Wall Street. He made a killing in the market.
Oh. Okay. That's very
Dark.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, great for all of those people and all of that cultural celebration. Now
We are all together as we sing our song. Joyful. All right, fine. Do we have any questions or not?
we have a bunch of questions, and what finer way to start the show than with a question from Vendée Radio?
Oh, okay.
Who says, Dear Charles, in 1960, Catholics made up 59.4% of the population of Rhode Island. Massachusetts had the second largest proportion of Catholics at 49.7%. Were there any Catholic leaders at this time, before Vatican II, with the bravery and vision to advocate forming an integralist party and securing the establishment of Catholicism as a state religion, thus taking a critical step towards the conversion of the United States?
Well, to put this into a simple and understandable format, I guess the best way to address the question would be to say no. You did have Wilfrid Beaulieu, who was the great French-Canadian editor of Le Travailleur in Worcester, Mass. Belloc used to write for him, and he had been going for 40 years at that time. And he was sort of a distributist kind of guy, but not really, no.
Yeah.
John F. Kennedy.
So would you say, let's just talk about this a little more. So would you say perhaps that didn't happen because perhaps Catholicism of New England at the time was so perhaps ingratiated with Freemasonry principles?
Well, with the American concept.
The American concept.
We were not in favor. John Courtney Murray was the big American spokescreature for the Church in America about these things. And he was of the opinion, as many were, that our system in the States was the best for the Church. I mean, didn't we send more money to Rome than anybody else? Yeah. So.
Right. The Church was looking to America, or the whole world was looking at America and saying that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the answer is no.
Right. Vendée has another question. He says, Dear Charles, please can you speak on one of the greatest tragedies of Christendom? Please can you speak of how, from when Duke Charles the Bold of Burgundy was cut down by Swiss footmen in the snow outside Nancy in 1477, until Clemenceau insisted on the abdication of the last Austrian emperor, Blessed Karl, in 1918. Christendom was divided and rent by Franco-Habsburg Rivalry. So in other words, what he's saying is talk about the time period from 1477 to 1918, when Christendom was divided and rent by the Franco-Habsburg Rivalry.
Well, basically, when the Burgundian, the daughter of Charles the Bold, Mary of Burgundy, married Emperor Maximilian I, the Habsburgs, in a sense, picked up the Burgundian feud with the House of Bourbon. Well, House of Valois, they were then. And this would express itself in different ways. Some few years later, Francis I, Francois I, ran for Holy Roman Emperor against Henry VIII and Charles II of Spain. Charles II won, he became Charles V, the emperor, and then he and Francois were at war incessantly. Then Francois began the policy of allying with the Turks against the Church to fight the Habsburgs. Under Louis XIII, Pope Urban VIII encouraged Louis XIII because he was afraid that the Habsburgs were becoming too powerful. He encouraged Louis XIII to ally with the Swedes against them, and this policy was continued under Louis XIV by Count Richelieu. And it was a terrible policy. It allowed the survival of the Protestant revolt. From that time until 1756, the Habsburgs and the kings of France would be on opposite sides of any given conflict. But that ended in 1756 with what was called the Diplomatic Revolution, where the Bourbon and the Habsburg united, and their union was sealed by the marriage of Louis the Dauphin to Maria Antonia, Louis XVI to Maria Antoinette. Unfortunately, whatever good that might have done was destroyed by the French Revolution. The Habsburgs, of course, became the foremost opponents of the revolution in its various forms, down to and including the Third Republic of late 19th century France. And of course, the Third Republic got its own in the end by Clemenceau insisting on the destruction of the Habsburg Empire. So that it is in a nutshell. It allowed both the Turks and the Protestants to prosper, and Catholicism to wither a bit.
Right. Anglo-Albertan monarchist says, greetings from His Majesty's province of Alberta.
Oh, Canada.
Yeah?
Okay, never mind. Go ahead.
In the Dominion of Canada, my question is as follows. Who was Henri Count de Chambord? And what is Charles's opinion of the aforementioned count? Why do so many monarchists have a low opinion of Chambord? Finally, but most importantly, if Charles had been the count's chief advisor in the early 1870s, would he have urged Chambord to accept or reject the deal the French government offered to restore Henry to his rightful throne as King of France?
Well, the Comte de Chambord, Henri V, Henry V, was the grandson of Charles X, for whom Charles X abdicated the throne in 1830. So de jure, he became king in 1830. Unfortunately, he died childless in 1883. He raised the deposed young Duke of Parma, who was the father of Empress Zita. And interestingly enough, he died on August 24th, today. I know this because last year I went to an anniversary mass for him on this very day in Austria, because that's where he ended up living. Anyway, well, basically the story is like this. After the defeat of Napoleon III, the royalists were the majority in the French Parliament. They asked him back. He came back. He negotiated. He insisted on the restoration of the white lily flag as the national flag, whereas they wanted to keep the tricolor. And for that reason, he refused to accept the throne. Now, on the face of it, a lot of people have thought this was simply being ridiculous and tied to a flag and blah, blah, blah. But obviously there's something deeper than this, and that was, what kind of king would he be allowed to be? Mm-hmm. Would he be allowed to actually affect things, or would he be like the King of England? And so, in that stand, and if you look at it from that setup, would he have been wiser to have accepted the throne or not? Well, I certainly wouldn't have wanted it. Not under those terms. Now, you might say, however, that he probably should have started propagandizing for the white flag and for his own authority much earlier on. But, he had a hard life. So what would I have told him to do? You know what? I really can't tell you. I would have had to have been there.
Okay. Kyle says, thank you for answering my last question. I loved Vinny's reaction to finding out about Buddhist armies. Yeah, it's surprising. This week, I would like to know Charles's view of the Japanese Civil War, also known as Sengoku Jidai, and its impact on the modern world, and his views of the rivalries between Takeda Shingen and Kenshin Usugi, the Iko Iki uprising, or Buddhism's version of Islamist jihad, and the KKK, and the Shinabawa uprising by Japanese Christian samurais. Many thanks as always. God bless.
Well, this refers to the period in the 1500s, at the beginning of which the Japanese were somewhat open to evangelization, and a great many Japanese converted. As he rightly says, the outcome of the Civil War, however, put Buddhist extremists in power who were very anti-Christian and who persecuted the church. And that, of course, led to a revolt of Catholic samurai. And it's interesting that there were enough of them that they could revolt. Obviously, had it been successful, the history of Japan would have been very different.
You know, that's interesting. So this takes me back to a question. It must have been 6 years ago. It was one of the early episodes on the show, because I thought it was so interesting. You made the point, like, what would chivalry look like without Christianity?
Yeah.
And you said the samurai.
Yeah.
And so now we're talking about Japanese Christian samurais. So that almost begs the question. So, I mean, do they believe in seppuku? And
No,
some of these other... No, they don't.
No, they didn't. And of course, had the conversion of Japan got underway and finished, it would have certainly changed the civilization of the world, certainly of East Asia. They would not have retreated, into the hermit kingdom. What a Japanese Catholicism would have looked like in a Catholic Japan, who can tell? But I mean, if you could imagine the great temples at Ise and Kyoto being cathedrals, it would be as though the Chinese converted, and the emperor gave up the temples of heaven and earth to be cathedrals. It would have changed the history of the world enormously.
Wow.
Ba-da-ba-da-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum.
I don't like that, because that cheapens it. Like, you just put a tremendous, one of the biggest what ifs. It would have changed the history of the world totally, and then you just...
Excuse me, who was attacking Chinatown as a dump earlier?
I didn't... Okay, now you're putting words in my mouth. I didn't attack it as a dump at all.
It's only a few blocks from Skid Row. What are you implying there?
It's not that it's a dump, but don't be mindful of when you put food out publicly for ghosts. That's all I'm saying. Is that so hard?
Yes.
To understand?
Since you ask, yes. Ba-da-ba-da-bum-bum-bum-bum.
All right. John says, what is the history of Tammany Hall, and why did political machines of that sort fade away?
Well, Tammany Hall was an organization in New York City that lasted in the 1970s. It was founded in the 1790s, I think, by ex-Revolutionary War officers as a mutual benefit association. And it became amalgamated or affiliated with the Democratic Party, and a big part of the New York political structure. And it became typical of the urban mayoral and political structures that ruled quite a number of American cities. Why did they fade away? Well, they faded away for a number of reasons. One of them being, I think, that in the American system, where once upon a time you had a lot of power both in the federal government, state governments, and city governments, over the past 60 years, 70 years, power has flowed out of the local areas into Washington. to some degree to the states, but particularly to Washington.
What does that mean?
What it means is the people with real political interests, with driving political genius, go to Washington. They don't stay behind in Slackjaw, where they're from.
Yeah.
Because that's not... There was a time when being mayor of a given city really meant something. But you look at the morons that we've got running the cities of America now, the major ones, and these are very stupid people, because the real talent goes to Washington. I mean that in a nice way.
Can a mayor do the same thing now as he could before? Is that part of it? There's less...
The thing is, he is dependent to some degree on state and federal grants. Whereas when cities were actually making money, then he could control
it. Cities don't run a balanced budget?
Not really.
It's a budget dependent on grants?
Yeah.
Really? Wow, I didn't know that.
Bum.
Okay, well, that's a power suck then.
Yeah, and so that's, before you could have a machine like the Daily Machine in Chicago affect the outcome of national elections. And now nobody cares.
Yeah.
And of course, if the Trump opponents really do have the kind of stranglehold on power that many of the Trump supporters believe they do, then it doesn't matter anyway, does it? Especially considering how much for reproductive rights he is.
Well, aren't there, given the nature of New York and California, isn't it fair to say that there is still some, Tammany Hall's not there, but there's still a stranglehold of some sort, so...
But they're not the best people. They're not, you can't compare either the mayor of New York or the mayor of Los Angeles today with the mayors of 8 years ago.
Who were running Tammany Hall.
Or the LA equivalent, yeah.
Well, if the mayors back then were so good, why did they need that?
I didn't say they were good.
Okay. But they were smart.
Smarter. Yeah.
So smart. Okay, so you're saying they're smart and they're corrupt.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, okay.
Now they're usually just as corrupt, but they're stupid.
So you're saying... Okay. So you're saying we used to have smart people, but all their smartness and all their innovation was dedicated toward power and corruption.
Well, it wasn't just that. Power and corruption, but also they realized that maintaining power meant keeping their constituents happy.
Yeah.
Well, see, the schmucks that run the show now don't realize that. It's a little too hard for them. They can't figure that part out. It's hard. Defund the police. Oh, but then what happened? Well, I don't know. I'm a moron.
Yeah.
You would never have had anybody remotely that stupid in city office 50 years ago. But today we do. Imagine the whole country is one big Chuck E. Cheese.
That's not so bad, is it? One big Chuck E. Cheese?
It is when you consider
pizza every day? Video games?
When you consider that it's the government, yes.
Who's the government, Chuck?
Chuck E. Cheese.
But it's pizza and video games.
Yeah, it is.
What's wrong with that? I don't understand.
Nothing if you're not running the show. But if you're in charge and all you're doing is eating pizza and playing video games, if you're a big first-class zero, then yeah. There's a problem with being stupid and in power. There's a real problem with that.
What?
You'll find out. Just wait. Wait till the election's over. What? Something to look forward to. Discovery. Learning new things.
Are you going to vote for Trump or not?
Not.
Oh, so you're not a man of your word.
No, I'm not. When he said he was, he was going to be good on reproductive rights, he decided me. I'm not voting for a pro-abortion candidate.
What if he wasn't that?
But what if he was? What if he was a good person?
You know, because I was watching you flail before he got weird on that. But so he really gave you an out.
He sure did. Thank you, Mr. Trump. You know, I feel a little bit, as I often do these days, like Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Who? Tim's character? Oh, wait.
No, he's going to be president. No, the chick.
Susan Sarandon?
Yeah, what's her name? Janet. She says, "Oh, if only our car hadn't broken down." And the audience roars, "But it did!" And she says, "If only we were among nice people." And they roar back at her, "But you're not." "If only we weren't run by morons." "But you are." "If only I didn't have two schmucks to vote for." "But you do."
You need a mental hygiene czar. I'll tell you that right now.
Your Majesty, I humbly appeal. I need the mental hygiene czar to wash it all out. I got to wash that everything out of my head. I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you see, the good news is this, though, and there's always good news if you can twist your head a little bit into a pretzel, and it's this. You may think that my generation has screwed everything up for you. You may think that by producing a situation in which Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are the brightest and the best, that we've really messed it all up. Nothing could be further from the truth. In reality, we have created for you a series of character-building challenges. And if you can overcome these through sheer wisdom and strength of character, that everything will come out right in the end.
You're malicious. All right, next question.
Malicious? I was just smiling.
It's like, honestly, it's like, character building challenges. You know what that reminds me of? Jigsaw.
Well,
for the Saw horror movies, for you guys that don't know.
I never saw the film, but I know the character. I think he might have helped write the Constitution. Did you ever consider that Jigsaw was one of the founding fathers?
I had not considered that. No.
No, you can't. Nobody knows what he looks like, but you can imagine him in the wig and all the rest of it with the Philadelphia. What would help with this? I know.
All right. That's pretty close to your jack-o'-lantern character too. To be honest, it's kind of degenerating into Jigsaw a little bit.
Maybe jack-o'-lantern was at the Constitutional Convention. You want freedom, do you? Oh, we'll give you freedom.
All right. Final question today, but it's a doozy. This is going to be a great one. From Dale, who says, "I am an old Catholic and an old Catholic. I'm 86 and ordained in the Old Catholic Church. Utrecht. No papal infallibility. All that. But so many old Catholics have gotten mixed up with weirdnesses such as Rosicrucianism and Kabbalah, as I have become more and more Orthodox that from time to time, like every week, I think that a nice swim in the Tiber is indicated. However, just today I visited the local Roman parish. Pope St. Pius X, if my memory is correct, allows me to visit you guys, but not for you guys to visit us. There was a female of indeterminate age carrying the cross, doing some of the altar boy things, who gave a whole new meaning to Ampola. The priest, whom I think must be from South India, but without much English, had his speech further garbled by a sketchy box on the wall. And then the responsorial psalm and prayers of the people, communion on the hand in one kind, which was neater than having wine on one's hands, but I thought one of the goals of Vatican II was to restore the chalice to us peons. At least it was not administered by the ampola. So, after my little diatribe, my question to the not really very old at all Charles is, what thoughts have you about the old Catholics? Will St. Peter let me in even if I don't give proper obeisance to the Pope? I pray that the Catholic Church will start celebrating Masses again, but I don't think I will live that long. At the same time, I believe that my ordination is valid, if not ordinary, which is why I find the new thing perhaps valid, but don't understand why anyone would accept its being ordinary.
Well, there's a great set of questions there. Uh, so first, let's pick apart what the old Catholics are. Uh, this is a term, firstly, with two very different meanings in Europe and the United States. So we'll deal with that first. Way back in the 1700s, 1723, I think, Jansenism was condemned, and the Catholic Church in Holland, a portion of it, focusing on the chapter of canons of Utrecht. There was no bishop, but the chapter had survived the Protestant revolt. But they had become interested in Jansenism, and when the church condemned Jansenism, they refused to accept the condemnation, and then they got one of their number consecrated a bishop by a former papal nuncio to the east somewhere. And that was what was called the Little Church of Utrecht. And they went on until 1870. Now, in 1870, the definition of papal infallibility, there were small groups in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, that refused to accept it. And they joined the Little Church of Utrecht in what is now called the Old Catholic Church, the Union of Utrecht. Now, they started claiming that they called themselves Old Catholic because they said they were opposed to the innovations of Rome in Vatican I. But they very quickly got rid of Latin in the Mass, the Council of Trent, clerical celibacy. I mean, for people who were supposed to be maintaining the old traditions, they became very revolutionary. Nevertheless, they then made contact with a group in the United States of Polish people who had been disaffected by Archbishop Ireland of St. Paul, Minnesota. And these became the Polish National Catholic Church in the United States, the only American member of what was then the Union of Utrecht. And these are the old Catholics. Now, sometime around 2000, I forget exactly when, the European Old Catholics accepted the ordination of women. The Polish National Catholics refused to. So they broke away and formed what was called the Union of Scranton, with small groups in Europe who wouldn't go along with the ordination of women. So that's them. And it's a fairly easy to define group. Now, that's the easy part. Now for the real fun. At different times over the past 200 years, certain individuals have gotten validly ordained as bishop, and then sort of gone off consecrating other people as bishops. And there are a large number of these folk. We call them episcopi vagantes in Latin, wandering bishops. And if you read a book called Bishops at Large, came out in 1964, a man named Peter Anson, they give you a very good introduction to this interesting world. Now, one of these, there's several sources of these bishops. One of them was a man named Jules Ferret, who's a Frenchman who claimed to have been consecrated by a Syriac patriarch of Antioch. There was René Velat, who was a Belgian priest, a French priest, who was consecrated a bishop by a schismatic bishop in South India. Mm. And then there was Arnold Harris Matthew, who's probably the biggest generator of such folk. Arnold Harris Matthew convinced the Archbishop of Utrecht in the 1890s or 1900s that there was a desire for an old Catholic Church in England. So he got himself consecrated. He opens up shop. He consecrates like 5 or 6 bishops and ordains 2 or 3 priests. And he has, an elderly couple who comes in on Sunday. And that was his church. Most of the people he consecrated as bishops were theosophists, members of the Theosophical Society, which sort of offers a kind of westernized Hinduism. Well, initially he didn't have any problem with theosophy, but as he studied it, he came to, and he finally decided it wasn't reconcilable with Christianity. So he gave his clergy the choice between him and theosophy, and most of them chose theosophy. And they in turn reorganized into what is called the Liberal Catholic Church. You've seen them in Ojai, if you've driven up that way.
Those hippies?
They're not hippies.
Okay. Oh, never mind. I guess it's Thomas Aquinas College.
It's near Thomas Aquinas College. Okay. There are hippies at Ojai, but they're not the LCC.
Okay.
In fact, if you went to the LCC and you weren't quite aware of what was going on, you would think it was far more Catholic appearing than most of what you'll see in most Catholic churches.
Interesting.
Well, it's something you got to bear in mind, and it goes to what our friend pointed out.
Yeah, Dale.
Yeah. So that he consecrated a couple of other bishops, several of whom came to the United States, as did, and Villant was already here, and several other people were here. So you had the beginning of what I can only call a whole world of its own of consecrating bishops. And most of these, the church would say, are valid. But the way it normally works is, Matthew was the prototype, you might say. I get myself consecrated a bishop. So I start and because I can do what I want, I'm a bishop now, right? So let's say I happen to like the Mozarabic rite in Spain very much, but I think it should be in English and Spanish for the locals. And I really, really like Celtic chant.
Okay.
So I start the Celto-Mozarabic diocese of the southwestern United States. And I am the metropolitan, and I consecrate 8 or 9 bishops and ordain 4 or 5 priests, and I have 2 or 3 lay people who come in. And our masses are exactly whatever I want them to be. And then eventually I get into a fight with my bishops, and they go off and they do their own thing. And so it goes. And it has gone for over 100 years. And so in LA alone, we've got at least a couple of hundred of such bishops.
It strikes me that there should be some mechanism to kill this thing in the crib. So it seemed like it first happened to the Jansenists. So the Jansenists were heretics, and presumably one of the bishops was a Jansenist, and he started this thing?
Well, back in the 1720s.
In the 1720s, but that's when it started, right? That was the genesis of this. So how do you stop this?
You don't. You can't.
Some requires some form or some intention.
See, from time to time they try to form groups among themselves, but you got to bear in mind they tend to be made up of individuals who inherently are not, shall we say, team players. And of course, as you can imagine, in this as in many other areas, all of the excitements and insanities since Vatican II have only played into their hands.
Sure.
Now I've drawn an extreme case, but let's say you've got one of these folks who just says either the Tridentine Mass or an English language version of it of some kind in great dignity. He really believes in the sacraments. Some of them are crooks, some of them are crazy, some of them are deeply sincere people who have their own particular vision that wouldn't get off the ground in the church. With people like that, how do you organize them? How could you? And they try. every now and then they'll have reunions, and they'll have excommunications and schisms and end of schisms and all sorts of fun stuff. It's a subworld all its own.
I can't even begin to fathom it, to be honest.
And when he mentions Rosicrucianism and Kabbalah and oh heavens, whatever you like, whatever you want to mix with it, anything you want to do, you can do. It's the ultimate in America, which is why, although they have them in Europe and Australia and so forth, in the United States, it's always their happy hunting ground.
That makes sense.
Do it your way.
That makes sense. Okay.
Now, what is our friend's name again?
Adele.
Adele. Dale? Now, that's my summation of the thing as a whole. Now, what about you in particular? Well, first and foremost, let me say this about that. Two wrongs never make a right. And speaking as one who's been a Catholic all through Vatican II and seen more abuse than I can tell you about or would want to, let me say that that's all beside the point when it comes to my soul. I must die. If I want to go to heaven, at the very least, I've got to die in communion with the See of Peter, no matter what I think of its occupant. That's really that simple. Now, if I were in your shoes, and again, I don't know what your background is, and I don't know what strain of old Catholic you come from. Usually, you'll not be allowed to operate as a cleric of any kind. Now, the reason for this isn't because they think you're an evil person, but it's because the very nature of old Catholicism in this country would lend one to think they're a trifle unstable. And entrusting souls to you is something that, despite the kind of garbage they do entrust souls to, I know you might be thinking that, and I can't disagree with you. But that aside, they would want you to live as a layman. That also, by the way, would not be a judgment on your orders either, which in all likelihood are probably valid. What I would do is I would try to seek out a Latin Mass community, an ordinariate parish, or a Eastern Catholic parish, or for that matter, just a parish with perpetual adoration. That's half the battle. Shows they believe in the real presence anyway. And go there and try to be as active there as you can, and bring the insights you've acquired to the good of the church, to the use of the church. You see, the problem, Dale, with vagantidom, as you might say, is that its denizens, well, as I say, some of them I've known, I've got nothing but an enormous amount of respect for. But they were not called by the church, they were called by themselves. And, it's not a state I would want to die in. So I urge you, as strongly as possible, to take whatever time you have left and to lay your gifts at the foot of the church. And again, the sort of places I mentioned, they're likelier to have a use for them than the kind of place you describe. I mean, for instance, you might be very good as a master of ceremonies liturgically. I don't know because I don't know your liturgical background, but that's the kind of thing that comes to mind. Or catechism. And these things may seem very small, but and I say this as one who feels the cold breath on my neck at 64, how much more would it be if I make it to your age, which is, by no means a certainty. You really need to prepare for that last journey. And the best way to prepare for it is to reconcile with the church despite her imperfections, and to use the abilities that you've acquired over a lifetime in her service. That's my suggestion for you. And You know, some of the finest people I've ever known, I've met in the ranks of Vigantedom. So I don't, you know, I may make a bit of fun, but it's not ridicule, not ever. It's a very strange world. I met some very peculiar people, and I got to tell you, but not all of them. Anyhow, I appreciate very much the question, Dale, and especially given our disparity in age, I very much appreciate you giving me the opportunity to respond to you. Thank you.
Right. Sorry about this crazy thumbs up thing that's been going on. I don't know how to stop this. This is a FaceTime or QuickTime player thing, but it interprets some of our movements sometimes as like me saying thumbs up. I don't know what's going on here. But
it doesn't do finger and nose.
It doesn't do finger and nose. No. It doesn't do thumbs down either. I wish it would do some thumbs down. I feel like there's a lot of... Oh, it did!
Hey!
Good job, Charles. There we go. It likes to be positive, though. It's always giving the thumbs up. But, all right. Great answer, Charles. I'm sure Dale appreciated that. This was a pretty fun episode. But, alas, we have arrived at the end of it.
Well, we can't go yet.
Okay.
We can't go yet.
Okay, then let's not. Let's just sit here and banter.
Well, let me just ask a question. Can you hear the Subuck singing, Sergeant Flynn? Can you hear the tom-toms ringing, Sergeant Flynn? There are better days to be for the 7th Cavalry. So we'll sing a song of cheer for Gary Owen. Gary Owen, Gary Owen, Gary Owen, in a valley in Montana all alone. There are better days to be for the 7th Cavalry. So we'll sing a song of cheer for Gary Owen. How was that?
That was great. Who's Gary Owen?
Not who, but what. It's a suburb of Limerick. And a lot of Irishmen from Gary Owen came over to the United States and served in the U.S. Cavalry. Mm. And their big song was a different song.
Yeah. Gary, Indiana?
No. Let Barker's sons be not dismayed, and join with me, jovial blade. Come booze and sing, and lend your aid to Gary Owen in glory. Instead, a spa will drink down hill, and pay the reckoning on the nail. No man foot it will go to jail from Gary Owen in glory. So many of these lads went into the 7th Cavalry that they became known as the Gary Owens. And that, in turn, because they're called the Gary Owens, after the unfortunate incident at Little Bighorn, that led to, can you hear the Subuck singing, Sergeant Flynn? Can you hear the tom-toms ringing, Sergeant Flynn? There are better days to be for the 7th Cavalry, so we'll sing a song of cheer for Gary Owen. Gary Owen, Gary Owen, Gary Owen, in a valley in Montana all alone. There are better days to be for the 7th Cavalry, so we'll sing a song of cheer for Gary Owen. That's how it was sung. Now, what was not sung was when it came out in the 60s.
Okay. What wasn't sung in the 60s?
Well, it was sung in the 60s, but not by the 7th Cavalry. It goes, please, Mr. Custer, I don't want to go. The men of the 7th Cavalry rode off to fame and victory. Whoa!
Okay.
You never heard that?
No.
After the show, I'll play it for you.
Okay.
And speaking of after the show, what is it if it's Monday?
It's off the menu.
And the soul you save?
It may be your own.
See you next week, gang.